Hey, everyone. Welcome to Locked On Lakers for Thursday. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky. Andy, big news from Shams regarding the Indiana deal and mystery around LeBron's hair. That's next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers your first listen of every day, Monday through Friday, sometimes on weekends, no matter how or where you get your podcasts, always free, never behind a paywall. Make another Locked On podcast your second listen of every day, but only after making us your first listen. Locked On Lakers on YouTube, where you go to get the show, the visual version of it. See us do it, all the fun little things we throw up on the screen. And it's also a great way, the YouTube channel, to get yourself involved in the show. Leave us questions, leave us comments. We weave as many of them as we can into it. I'm sure, Andy, there will be some comments based on the news that came out Wednesday that the Lakers, according to Charania of The Athletic, have passed on the opportunity, I should say, to include two unprotected first-round picks to seal the Buddy Hield, Myles Turner deal with Indiana. Turner is expected to open the season as Indiana's starting center. This is a really big deal that we will get to as soon as we deal with the big news of the day.
Yeah, we talked at great length during Wednesday's show about the Instagram photo LeBron James put out where he showed himself with what appears to be a completely bald, shaven head. We congratulated LeBron for making this, frankly, very long overdue decision. We understand as two men who've gone through this, the different emotions that LeBron was dealing with, the different fears. What if my head isn't correct? All of these different things that every man goes through if they are faced with.
Even, Andy, when you're LeBron James, one of the most
look,
powerful athletes and businessmen in this country.
Yeah, I mean, I would go as far as to say worldwide, but still at the end of the day, like Ivan Drago, he's just a man. And he's a man with insecurities just like the rest of us. And we went out of our way, Brian, to make sure LeBron understood that he has our support, that he has our congratulations, that we are here for him as fellow members of this tribe. And as it turns out, there's a chance that LeBron was just putting out a photo of himself using some type of app with the Instagram photo, like a bald cap.
Right, apparently. Like, and see, look.
It's not confirmed. It's not confirmed one way or the other.
I got my nice shirt on right now. Like, I got a job, man. I got kids. You know, I'm not as online, perhaps, as I ought to be. I missed. Apparently, there's a whole thing out there right now, Andy. About like bald filter. Like every once in a while, you know, like the big, what's the big Insta filter of the day? Apparently this week it's bald. I apparently just live an Insta filter. And so I didn't realize, it didn't even occur to me that this could be a filter.
Didn't either. You know why it didn't occur to me? Because this is something LeBron's needed to do for so damn long.
And that's why, by the way, if you go into the comments section for Wednesday's show, people are like, way to go, man. Like it's not like Quinn Snyder or Luca or, you know, Danilo Gallinari.
Years ago, Brian, years ago, when the first Iron Man movie was made, Jeff Bridges played the villain in that movie. And for that villain role, Jeff Bridges shaved his head. And Jeff Bridges has incredible hair.
Fantastic hair.
He has some of the best hair
Touched
in Hollywood
by
history.
The gods, Andy.
The man's gone through chemo and has managed to keep his hair. And, you know, thankfully, because he's one of our all-time favorite actors, both of us, he seems to be doing really well. But like Jeff Bridges has like hair that should be registered with the government. And I remember when he shaved his head for this role, I actually got really angry at him. Because I'm like, look, man, you can use a damn bald cap, you know, or some type of Hollywood trick. You don't risk that hair for, you know, Iron Man. This is before we knew what the MCU was going to turn into and all
Right.
that stuff.
It turns out it actually was worth it.
Well, but you know what? Actually, I would go so far as to say it still wasn't worth it, because it all was going to turn into that, whether Jeff Bridges did this or not.
They could have just CGI'd it.
It just turned into much more of a historical film than we knew at the time. LeBron, though, ain't risking a damn thing if he lops it off. Like, it's self-improvement.
It is using a filter, apparently,
maybe,
to do, and we'll find out on Monday. Like,
Yeah.
this will be like, now that we have sort of clarity on the roster situation, the Indiana deal is not going to happen, and we're going to get to that in a minute here. Darvin and Pelinka won't speak until after the players do, at the very least. So for the very least, easily the thing I'm most interested in at this point in terms of the player interviews and the player portion of Media Day is I don't even need to ask him a question. Just literally, what does LeBron look like when he gets there?
Yeah, again, this is something LeBron should have done years ago. And here's the thing, Brian. If this was some kind of, Instagram joke with the filter and we fell for it, guess what? The joke's not on us.
No.
The joke is actually on LeBron, because he'll be the one stuck with this patchy mess of hair.
And then in 6 months, we're going to be right back here anyway.
Yeah, and I'll tell you this right now. I'm glad you mentioned that. 6 months from now, if this was a joke, we tried to help LeBron.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one thing, because we've actually suggested this in the past. We've been very open about wanting to lead LeBron to water, so to speak. And if he's going to help, if he's going to decline the help, fine, whatever. But then to mock this type of help in the process, don't come crying to us in 6 months when it becomes clear you got nowhere left to run.
Or when sometime in late November or something like that, somebody catches LeBron's hair at a really odd angle on TV and screen grabs it and puts it out there like, oh, look at Lay hairline here. And, he makes fun of him and turns him into a meme. Like, he is officially making his own bed and needs to lie in it.
No, we offered him our friendship. We offered him our mentorship. We offered him like a sympathetic ear and a sounding board, and he turned it down. Whatever. You know what? Over the course of this season, I'm going to be doing a hair watch.
Yeah.
I'm going to be doing a hair watch and a hair report, and I'm going to keep up with, if it turns out LeBron did not do the right thing, I'm going to be letting our listenership, who can't watch every single game, I'm going to let them know where his hair stands.
I will say this. Somebody left in the comment section on the YouTube page. Let me see if I can find this really quick. The comments are great. This is from Steve Wise, because again, a lot of people, maybe they're not as online as other people. Maybe they didn't read the filter. Maybe it is a filter. Maybe it isn't. But so much of the commentary is based on people just assuming he's doing the right thing. Steve Wise says, it's about time dude had a hairpiece on the court. He needs to shave the beard next. I disagree with that. I like the beard. Bryant Brown says, man, LeBron been bald. This ain't news. His hairline was on the back of his neck. This from Young No Clout. Guys, it's a filter. He still has hair. This I like from James M. Was a fake bald head filter. Plus, LeBron still has too much hair to shave it bald. Wrong, James.
Wrong.
M. He does not. This is my favorite part, though. Costs more maintenance to keep a clean-shaved head versus getting a new haircut every 1 to 3 weeks. First of all, no, it doesn't. But second of all, he's a billionaire. Like, I am not. Look, LeBron takes care of his money. He's frugal. He doesn't subscribe to like the enhanced version of Spotify, I think it was, because it's like he can live with the commercials, doesn't want to pay extra.
I'm not joking.
Respect all
it's
that.
It's the reason why I use the Spotify with the ads. My philosophy has always been good enough for LeBron, good enough for me.
This is an incidental expense, I think, for a billionaire.
Well,
and
okay.
By the way,
first of all,
I take care. I do this, 3, 4, 5. Every time I shower, I give myself a haircut. The only thing I will say, maybe it's more expensive in terms of a time investment, but I think the amount of time LeBron spends artfully trying to maintain this sham of a hairline is far greater than the time it takes to just shave your own head in the shower.
Absolutely.
Sorry,
first
James
of all,
M. You're just wrong.
First of all, I'm sure he has a handler that can do that for him. And secondly,
Wait,
whatever.
by that you mean you think LeBron would bring somebody into the shower to shave his head while he's in there?
No,
Or
it's
like
not
outside the shower?
I mean, I guess either or. We're all professional adults here. But secondly,
He is busy.
yeah, and it doesn't have to be done in the shower anyway. But it's also a write-off. But
Yeah.
either way, again, if it turns out on Monday he's got a shaved head, all is good in the world. Again, we are here for you, LeBron.
I hope he is. All right, now back to, I guess, what some people might consider to be a more important story. I don't agree. The Lakers apparently aren't going to make that Indiana deal, and so that's next.
Locked On Lakers brought to you by BetOnline, your number one source for all your pro and college football betting needs and sports info this season. Find all the latest football league developments, game matchups, news, and podcasts. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores, the fastest, easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf, but also NBA future. Locked On Lakers listeners, if you are looking ahead to the 2023 season, you want to lay down a little early action. The Lakers are currently 6-point underdogs opening the season against Golden State, but maybe ring night is too much for the Warriors to actually focus. The Lakers pull the upset. They are currently 7-1 odds to win the West, only behind the Warriors, Clippers, and Suns, and Darvin Ham, a 20-1 bet to win Coach of the Year, which will definitely happen if the Lakers are in a position to win the West. Head to the website today, use your mobile device, learn more about the trends in action, bet online where the game starts.
Okay, so I did mention earlier I'm not like hyper online these days, but I did notice when I checked the right rail today on my Twitter feed that among the things that were trending were Rob Pelinka, Buddy Hield, Myles Turner, and Shams. So it's like, okay, something's gone on here today, Andy. And it turns out Shams reporting that the Pacers expect to open up the season with Myles Turner as their starting center, in part because the Lakers have passed, for now at least, on the option of including 2 first-round picks for Buddy Hield and Myles Turner, 2 unprotected first-round picks, which is what Indiana is asking for. They are also, the Lakers, not biting on what Utah is selling, which is everything. But that, Bogdanovich, Clarkson, Beasley, Conley, some 3, I guess, of those 4.
One-sided redundancy.
Mm-hmm. I've seen other reports that indicate there are other teams that are interested, certainly in the Lakers' first-round picks. We've seen that thing from San Antonio, for example, with like Doug McDermott in it, and Richardson and stuff like that. But these are not returns that are good enough to justify adding any picks, let alone first rounders. Maybe, I guess, if they put in Jakob Poeltl or something like that. The Lakers really liked Poeltl, who is a very good player, by the way, an excellent defensive center. But I don't think that's necessarily somebody that you start, reshaping your roster for, giving up picks right away. Well, this is sort of more evidence that the Lakers aren't doing anything right now, and they are going to make people very angry. If you go back through and you look at the Twitter comments, there are a lot of people upset, like, what is Rob doing? The deal is there, make it and get something done. Shams was basically explained it as the Lakers don't want to do it now. They feel like it's a bullet they only get to fire once using these 2 first rounders, and they want to wait and see if something better comes along.
Yeah, I mean, I would be curious to know, just because there have been rumblings about this, and I've heard it a little bit myself asking around, that Indiana really wants the Lakers to, in addition to adding those first round picks, that they want the Lakers to take Daniel Tice as well, and the $8-ish million that he's owed for this season, giving the Lakers yet another center. It would not be filling a particular area of need at all. And the Lakers may feel like, look, we're giving you the 2 first round picks, and we are taking on Buddy Hield, who I think is considered, if not a neutral contract, he's certainly not considered a pure positive contract either. You'd be going into a rebuild. We're taking $20 million or so off your books next year. We shouldn't necessarily have to clean your books this year and next year.
Right. And I think that's probably not something that would ultimately hold up the deal. I think if the Lakers were willing to do the first the 2 unprotected first rounders, Indiana would take it. That's my personal opinion.
I don't know. I mean, it's interesting as far as the idea of protections, and I'm going to qualify this by saying I don't know all the ins and outs of this, but I heard Zach Lowe talking about in the Low Post podcast that there are, I guess, restrictions in terms of how far ahead the Lakers can actually lay down protections on like a pick in, say, like 2029. So like the notion of protections or not protected, lightly protected, all that stuff, I'm not sure how much the Lakers are even allowed to do, even if they wanted
but
to.
Even let's just assume for argument that they can protect or not protect them to whatever degree that they want, and they're unwilling to make them unprotected. Let's just assume for the sake of argument.
I just want to throw that out for clarification.
Okay, but like, they don't want to put those picks in to whatever extent that the price here is too high. But I do think it's instructive that part of what Shams is reporting, when you go back, follow his Twitter feed, you'll be able to see all this, is that, part of it is the Lakers feel like this deal with Indiana probably still is there at the trade deadline. There could be another deal that's available. Stuff will pop up in between now and then. And what this isn't transformative enough. And we can have that debate. Maybe we'll do that in a second here. But that trade isn't transformative enough to take it now, to say that whatever possibilities we have for this season, we have to go in and committing ourselves to a path for the next few has to be done now. That this is as definitively as good as it's going to get, and we better jump on it. They clearly do not believe that's the case.
Well, there are 2 separate questions at hand here. There's the question of whether or not Myles Turner and Buddy Hield is a good enough return for those 2 first-round picks. You and I have both said that if we were in this position, we would make this deal.
I think it's the best deal they're going to get
this season.
Probably this season.
If they're looking to make a deal this season, I guess I should qualify it a little bit. If they are looking to make a deal this season, this is likely the best deal they're going to make. So if they think it is, I would say this, if they think it's good enough to eventually do, I would do it now. Because the odds of getting Buddy Hield and Myles Turner on the same page in 2 months well enough that you can actually contend against teams that are very good as it is and have had way more continuity, at that point, you're kind of punting this season anyway. So if you're going to punt this season anyway, you might as well just give yourself the most flexibility heading into next year. I mean, it's, one of the things we've talked about, and I know we had planned on getting into ESPN is doing their annual.
Yeah, but what you're getting at, if I understand you correctly, is the question: is that trade a better alternative than the one that's been put out there a lot, which is the Lakers keep the picks, go into the summer with cap space and the 2 first rounders?
I think it is potentially.
If I'm understanding you correctly.
Yeah, you are understanding me correctly. And I think it is potentially, if nothing else, as good. Because we went through, I believe it was last week, a look at some of the free agents that realistically could be available for the Lakers this coming off season. It's not terrible, and it's certain. Well, it's better than the Utah options. We agreed that
yes,
if you are going to choose between the flotsam and jetsam that they could get for Utah, having to sacrifice both picks and quote unquote punting on this season, trying to really put your best foot forward next year is the way better option. It's not even close.
Let's look at this. You mentioned the ESPN, annual player rank. There's a bunch of this out there right now, sort of these last evaluations before teams get into training camp. And it's instructive, not necessarily because of just the numbers for the individual Lakers and kind of framing the roster, but also in terms of looking at who is out there right now and kind of understanding what caliber player is coming back in return. So it's actually kind of for 2 guys who hate ranked lists and stuff like this.
When we worked for ESPN on the writing side, we used to beg out of this annual assignment all the time.
And I think if I, had like you fill out the little spreadsheet or whatever, and I'm just like, ding, 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 ding. I'm paying zero attention to what
I remember
I'm doing.
I landed on a compromise with one of my editors because he was just like, you guys have to do this. Like, this is part of your job. You are NBA writers. You have to do commentary on the Lakers who end up in these rankings. And the compromise I came up with my editors, can I at least just acknowledge in the writing how stupid I think ranking is? Like, can we do that?
Let's talk about let's talk about it though, because
But it really is stupid.
It does help frame the choice the Lakers are making, at least insofar as this year goes. So we'll do that next. All right. So not surprisingly, the NBA, the ESPN breaks it down. They do like, I think they start with 100 to 26.
Yeah.
And then they do like 25 to 10. And then they get into the top 10. Anthony Davis comes in at 20. LeBron is somewhere in the top 10. We haven't seen him yet. We'll talk about that stuff. The numbers are less important. Russell Westbrook is, I'm sure not surprisingly to anybody, the only other Laker ranked in the top 100. The point here isn't to argue about the number. He is ranked at 67, correct?
65.
65. Shortchanged him by 2. You wouldn't expect another Laker to be in the top 100. I'm not sure how far you'd have to go before you get to like top, the next guy could be 125. I'm not sure. For reference sake, Myles Turner is 66. Buddy Hield is 90. So in theory, the Lakers would be trading 2 first-round picks to essentially swap out guys who are comparably ranked. Fit aside, Myles Turner, light years better than Russ. I understand that. But just in terms of pure talent, for a guy who's ranked right at the fringe, 90. And then so the Lakers would get significantly better. They add shooting, which they badly need. They add, interior defense and a guy who plays really well around, could play really well around AD. Conley, to look at the Utah guys, Bogdanovich isn't ranked at all. Conley is 89. Clarkson is 85, and Beasley is also unranked. That's to have to give up 2 first-round picks for that minor an upgrade in talent, because with the Utah guys, you're adding a little shooting, you're maybe adding a small forward, and Bogdanovich and whatever. You're also adding a lot of guards. I think what we know is the Lakers don't need any of those. You're adding another 6'1" guard, and we know the Lakers don't need any more of those. It's not a great fit. So I get why they wouldn't go anywhere near the Utah stuff. And from a talent standpoint, I can see where they would say, we might as well wait and see if we can do better.
This is the thing I think you need to keep in mind. Obviously, these numbers don't mean anything in terms of just tangibly set in stone. We both offered the caveat of we find this project every year.
It doesn't matter if you think Westbrook is 65th, 73rd.
Right. You're never going to hear whatever. You're never going to hear us debate the numbers. We don't care. But it gives you an idea of just sort of where it does give you, I think, a reasonable idea of where guys stand among their peers across the league. And in terms of pure talent with these players that we've talked about, Russ is ranked as high as anybody's there. If you think Myles Turner is a little bit better than Russ, fine, whatever. But you could knock Russ down 15 spots to 80, and he'd still be better than Clarkson, still be better than Conley, still be better than Buddy Hield. And the reality is he is better than those players. And as much as fit matters, fit is important. We've spent this entire offseason talking about how, in a lot of respects, this roster does not fit in ways that are wholly obvious.
Profoundly disturbing.
Talent matters too, especially when, as you mentioned, Brian, you're talking about a supporting cast with nobody else either in the top 100 or with a legit case for top 100 status. Like I looked last year, Kendrick Nunn, who I would say is probably the consensus next best player on this team, certainly the most established, if nothing else.
I mean, I don't know.
He was not in the top 100 heading into last season before he got hurt. So like Russ is easily in the top third of talent on this roster, flaws and all. That is not debatable. So it does give you pause in terms of, even when you're acknowledging fit, even when you're acknowledging attitude, all that stuff, is the move you're making actually good enough to not just be lateral, but to actually make you more competitive and to kneecap every bit of optionality you have moving forward to try to keep upgrading? You can't just do the thing that's going to look the best in the moment, which would be signaling that you're not satisfied, that you're not willing to punt this season, whatever. The truth is, you make a bad move, you're punting this season anyway. You're just doing it more performatively.
I think an argument can be made that this is, and I am not a huge Pelinka guy, this is potentially some of the better work he's done. Because if you believe, going back to the end of last year and some of the reports early in the summer and some of the statements that have come out, that Pelinka's job is at risk this season if the Lakers don't perform. We did a show earlier in the summer where I said one of the things that I am most concerned about is that a GM GMing for his job doesn't do what GMs are supposed to do. GMs are supposed to think of the now, and they're supposed to think of the future, and they're supposed to balance those interests against each other. They sort of, if it was an investment, company, they'd have a fiduciary duty to protect, the interests of the client. They can't just do what's good for themselves. And desperate GMs who are GMing for their jobs often do things that are very questionable because they don't have to be there if the fallout comes, because they'll have been fired. And so, Pelinka passing up on trades that could, if everybody stays healthy, the Lakers swap out, Russ for Turner and Hield, and everything else stays the same. Everybody plays the same. The Lakers will win more games. They will win more games than they otherwise would.
If you want to make a move for this season, I would make that deal. Mm-hmm. I would do that.
And so I think the approach here, and look, I'm not saying it can't go wrong. They may end up kind of holding the bag. I think they feel like, in this case, the consolation prize of crap, we missed this opportunity. We could have done this. We could have done that. The trade didn't come along or whatever. They can at least anticipate what the outcome looks like at the end of the season, where they still have the picks, and the downside is a season will have gone by that maybe they didn't win where they could have. But it is a very defensible position, and at the very least, I am comforted by the fact that Pelinka does not seem desperate, and that there isn't a push to make him desperate. They could be wrong, but I'd like them to be wrong with a better process. And this, we've railed on them for process. This process doesn't seem to have panic in it, which I appreciate.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we'll know over time, because we'll eventually see if they make a move, whether this season, what they do this coming off season, if they end up essentially standing pat, we'll be able to evaluate ultimately the decisions. But they clearly, if nothing else, they are not going to move Russ just for the sake of moving him. I think they've come to the reasonable conclusion that you and I have said all summer. If you think he's going to be that destructive on this team, send him home after there's evidence of it.
Right.
Don't go into it with that attitude. Let Russ prove it to you, as opposed to just preemptively deciding it. But send him home, keep your assets, keep your options. Right. If you're not going to be able to truly make yourself better, don't do the performative thing.
And until there's more pressure, it seems, from other teams. Now, Jeannie is tweeting, like a lot of Lakers trending on my timeline here. Until there seems to be pressure where Myles Turner and Buddy Hield could disappear and go to another team or something like that, where your optionality starts to disappear. I get it. Like, you want as much time to make your roster work. But at the same time, I think, given that you're still probably a long shot to win a title anyway, it's worth being patient. We'll get more into this stuff. We got some other interesting things that to kind of look into about how the Lakers go about things. An interesting interview with Jesse Buss on Lakers.com, which we want to talk about. Ranking from Tom Ziller of it's a Substack news, or is it a newsletter or Substack? I think it's a newsletter. That gets into some things that kind of relate to the work that the scouting report department does and the future optionality for the Lakers. So still more stuff coming up as we get into Media Day next week. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you go to see all the stuff and participate in the show. We'll see everybody next time.